Hi folks, welcome to my Bit Retro Journal. Today I'm going to be talking about zip drives. These are floppy replacements that came out in the 90s. This drive itself was built in 1999, this was one of the first models, the Zip 100. And you could have it sitting here like that or like that. They came in two forms, SCSI and parallel. This is actually a parallel drive. I think I got this off of a Free Cycle, which is like a free exchange site where people give away stuff a few years ago. The one I actually had almost the identical version back in the 90s, but I actually had the SCSI version because I had an Mac 2 SI. And if you know anything about the original Macs, they never actually, I don't think any Mac ever actually had a parallel port. They had SCSI ports and serial ports, but never a parallel port. So these were actually some of my original discs. I think this is an unformatted one, but this is what the disc looks like. And you can see if you compare it to a 3.5-inch one, they're just ever so slightly bigger. They're also just a little fatter. But other than that, it's very similar in size, but it can hold 100 megabytes instead of 1.4 for these old floppies. So what I want to do today is just make sure this thing still works, and then by hooking it up to a modern computer, and talk about what I kind of want to do with this. So let me talk about that first. So one usefulness that I might have with this parallel one, again, it has two parallel ports in the back, the zip port and then the pass-through for the printer, is, when I was playing with my IBM ThinkPad for December, which was a 96 computer, I struggled getting files on and off. I actually ended up having to write a CD on my DVD reader writer on this machine, and just put some files on that, and then I could read it off of the CD drive. But that's a little cumbersome. Now the IBM ThinkPad only has a 2 gig disk, and so 100 megabyte floppy drive would be great. And so the nice thing about that machine is it has a built-in parallel drive, and there are Windows 98 drivers, so that should work. I'm not going to try that today. For this to be useful, though, then I need to be able to actually also hook this up to one of my modern machines. And of course I have this iMac, which is, I think, 2012, but it doesn't have a parallel port. And so I've had this thing right here, which is a USB to parallel connector forever. And I was thinking, oh, well, I can just use that to hook it up. And so I took a bit of time to sort of learn about how these work, as well as parallel ports. So this implements the Centronics IEEE 1284 standard, and that's what this thing also uses. And so I thought, oh, it's good to go. However, it turns out nothing is ever as simple. There's actually 5 modes to that standard, and most printer these USB converters only implement the first couple of modes, because all they really need to do is output data to the printer and then get some return back for control codes. Well, it turns out that modes 4 and 5, which are ECP and EPP, one is half duplex, one is full duplex, are designed for drives, for storage drives, and so they allow for slightly faster throughput. And of course, these cables aren't really designed for that. And I actually opened this cable up just to see how this was designed. And so again, you have the 4 wires from the USB, and then it's just a blob, and it's not fully connected either on the other side. So this is literally just to throw out some data, not to actually worry about what's coming back. And so it also turns out that the driver for the zip drive, for the parallel ones, they actually went above and beyond just using the parallel port. So they're doing some direct memory DMA, direct memory access, which you can't do with a USB, because they're trying to squeeze out as much speed as possible. And so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to hook it to this machine. This is running Windows 7. The driver for this is Windows XP, but I could have done that on the virtual machine that Windows 7 gives you. They give you a virtual XP just for that reason. And so what I'm going to have to use instead is this machine, which is my other sort of hobby machine. And I've mentioned this briefly once on my channel, but this Dell Inspiron 8600 was the machine that came after my IBM ThinkPad. If you saw one of my first December video, I kind of gave a timeline of the ZX81, which is not here right now, QL, IBM ThinkPad, and then this was the next machine up. And I like it for various reasons. One, by the way, is if you like the Star Trek, so I like Star Trek and Star Wars, but if you like Stargate, which is another science fiction series, the second incarnation of that was called Stargate Atlantis, which came out in the 2000s, and they actually used this model as their main laptops as they were, in a different galaxy in Atlantis, and they actually they covered this up with a badge that said Atlantis, Stargate Atlantis. But the reason I like this machine is that it has everything. So it's a great hobby machine. So it has, first of all, I'm running Windows 7 on there, and it actually runs pretty well. It came with a Intel Pentium M processor. I think it was either 1.6 or 1.8 gigahertz. I think I had the slower version, 1.6, but I upgraded it since to a 2 gigahertz Intel 755, and I can still update it even further to 2.2 gigahertz. I think it's Intel 780 Dothan. And I might, because I updated this a few years ago to the slightly faster gigahertz, because why not? And I think I have 2 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm not sure if that's maxed out, if it can go up to 4 gigabytes. But additionally, it's got 2 USB ports, or does it have 3? It might have 3 USB ports. It's kind of heavy, so it's not for the faint of heart, but it has 2 USB ports right back here. It's got Ethernet and modem. It's got it also has S-Video. It actually doesn't have a PS2 port, but it has S-Video. It has does it have a SD card slot? I don't think it does. It has a PCMCIA slot on this side, on this side, and then audio. What do you call those? 1394 port. Is that like a fire port? And even infrared, but it doesn't have SD card. But more importantly, if you can see it, I'm going to break it. It has a built-in parallel and serial port along with the VGA. So yes, this is a great tinkering computer, and it doesn't have HDMI. And it doesn't have SD card, but it has almost everything else. And I can run Windows 7 on this. So it's a cool little machine to use. I was trying to get the driver installed, and so one of the first things I did is I used Virtual PC or Windows XP mode, which is a free download for Windows 7 that allows you to run a Virtual XP integrated into Windows 7. It turns out, though, the Pentium M processor does not do hardware virtualization, so it wouldn't work. I tried VMware, which you can actually use the XP mode installation, so you don't have to reinstall XP from scratch. And it actually needed the VM server needed a serial number, which I didn't have, so I guess it's not free software. And it was also running really slow. And so what I did instead is there's a 100 gig disk in here, and I think I shrunk it by 4 gig, and then installed Windows XP on that 4 gig partition. So it's a dual boot machine, and it can share the drives between the boots. And so I can, and then I installed the software on here, and I got this to work. So that was a little bit of a rigmarole, but I did finally get this to work, and I was able to get the disk to work. And so problem 1 solved. If I need to put any files from my modern systems, USB based, both this and this, or I can use this machine, hook it up. Well, from these machines to my IBM ThinkPad, which doesn't have USB, has a floppy and a CD drive, I don't have to burn CDs anymore. I can literally hook this up to the zip drive, copy stuff onto here, and then hook my zip drive to my IBM ThinkPad, and good to go. Now, I don't really use that IBM ThinkPad all that much, but it's still a fun machine. It's still nice to have that ability. But what's cool about this zip drive is, let me move this out of the way again a little bit, is that someone also has attached this to an Amiga. So there's and written a driver for it. So there's actually software that allows this to hook to the Amiga via parallel port, and then has driver software for that. And there's a very short video on YouTube that actually has somebody booting this. I think it might be Amiga 600 booted up on this as a hard disk. And so what's cool about that is that the Amiga parallel port isn't actually standard, and so you have to create a special cable. And the latest edition doesn't even need any circuitry; it's just a cable. And what the cable does is it has a cable that goes from here to the Amiga, but then there's also an additional wiring where there's 5 lines that go to the joystick port on the Amiga. And so I believe what's happening is that on the Amiga at least, that it's using the parallel port out to write to this, and it might be using the joystick port in to read from it. Because again, if you don't have those other 2 modes that you're capable of supporting, then generally you can write to, say, a printer, but you might only get 1 or 2 control signals, lines for control back, whereas to get the full array of parallel transmission, both sending and also receiving, you need to, it uses more than those 1 or 2 lines. And again, that's not supported by most parallel ports except for, the IBM standard. So I believe the Amiga isn't standard parallel, and so whoever created this interface decided that they could read the 5 lines from a joystick port and maybe treat it as part of a byte. Maybe they're reading 2 or 3 lines off of the parallel port and then using the other 5 on the the first joystick port on the Amiga to actually then read that. And so that's kind of cool. And the reason I'm excited about this is when I realized, but before I actually did investigated on this parallel USB on my QL, I don't have the QL doesn't have a parallel port, but I have this, which is a serial to Centronics printer. And the reason this is interesting is because when I learned that this didn't work, I figured, well, there's no way I could ever try to hook this to the QL and get any reads and writes going, because it doesn't even have a parallel port, and its serial to parallel conversion is probably very similar to this USB one. I think there's like a little buffering chip in here. But if the Amiga can, go one way through the parallel port and come back through the control port, well, the QL has 2 control ports, also Atari style as well. And so maybe I can do something similar, because it would be kind of neat to be able to hook this to the QL and have it read and write. It would be really slow, and it'd be kind of a fun project. With most retro computers now, we have SD drive interfaces, so using floppies or even any sort of magnetic media seems kind of silly. However, I go back to what I've said in the past. One of the fun parts of retro computing is that I really like using magnetic media, like these mini tape cartridges. Even I don't know what I just did with my floppy. Am I sitting on it? Oh, it's right here. Floppy disks are kind of cool to use, and again, these behave a lot like floppy disks. So there's just a little bit of fun of using these old magnetic medias that are removable. Obviously, I think both my modern machine and even this have a hard disk bladder in here, but yeah, these magnetic tape-like media that are floppy disks. these, it's just kind of fun. So it'd be kind of cool to get this to work both on my Amiga, which I know is doable, and on the QL it's going to require more. So nothing may ever come on the QL side, but I have this connector, and unfortunately both of these, this for the USB and this for my QL, uses the 36-pin Centronics versus the 25-pin DB, which is what this uses. And so there you can get little converters that just map the signals. It's just so I don't have one. Otherwise, I'd. Well, I know this isn't going to work, so I didn't even try it. But yeah, so that's a future project. But after today of playing with this, I'm going to hook this to the Amiga and try to get it to work, because there's already software written. And the nice thing is the Amiga is 68,000 and it's written in a 68,000 assembly, so is the QL. So a future project down the line, I might do a little bit of tinkering to see if there's anything I can do with that and get this to perhaps work on the QL, which would be kind of cool. I think no one's done that, but I could just use the work that the folks did for this and the Amiga. So that's again, future project. The one thing I'm going to do today is, as I hook this up to my Dell Inspiron 8600 with my cabling, and this is just this goes to the back of this, and this goes into my parallel port on this computer. I have this little device, and this is just a serial pass-through that allows you to change the signals. So I'm going to turn all the dip switches on, and then I just want to see what the signaling is, because you can see the sends and receives as it goes through, because they have all LEDs. Just going to pass this through just to see what we get. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the video, and I'm going to rearrange this so that we can see a picture off of this. You can see our drive, and have this hooked up so we can see this as well. What's also happening here, all right? So let me do that. Here we are. So I'm going to boot this up in Windows XP mode. Again, the drive is already installed. It was a really easy installation for that. So this is now hooked through that to my laptop, and it should work because all the switches are turned on. There's lights back here and there's lights here. You might not be able to see the ones back here. All right, so if I put a disk in here, and let me open up. I just want to make sure you can see this picture clearly. Yeah, so I need to adjust this slightly so you can see there we go. And so the zip drive is, so that's not working. So unfortunately, this thing is not letting the signals through. I opened up the breakout board and looked at the circuit board, and what the issue is, pin 7, which is the signal ground. And if you look on the front side of the board, there's 2 resistor packs that connect to a bunch of other traces, and so that's the issue. Is that I'm not quite sure why, since it's just supposed to be a breakout box for DB25 serial. I'm not sure why they wouldn't all be independent, but anyway, that's what's going on. But in any case, having it directly connected now, you can see that it's actually there. And if I open this, if I plug this in, you'll see that it doesn't actually auto do anything. But now that it's in, I can go here and double click on that, and it finds my README file. This is the README file that came with it. So this is the MS-DOS formatted zip disk. Just to do a timings, I have a couple of large files just to show you how fast this is. And again, this is the Windows XP driver. And if I were to just put this up here, let me just drag an 8 megabyte file over, which is this, and see how long it takes to actually write. So the light here is still going. It shows the thing right away, but it kind of fools you into thinking you're ready to go, but it actually hasn't finished writing yet. So you can see when it's done. 8 megabytes, sorry, for a parallel floppy. I mean, it's definitely a 100 megabyte floppy disk. It's definitely going to be faster than a floppy, and I'm able to copy 8 megabytes. And I think that is it. Okay, so then I have this 60 gigabyte. I keep saying gigabytes. I mean, it's funny how the sizes are just a factor off, right? So here's a 60 megabyte one. This is actually going to come up with a little copy screen. There we go. This is going to tell me it's doing the copying. Now it says 30 seconds remaining, which is a lie because the time's going to go up. 40 seconds, 60 seconds. But the driver does integrate nicely with the zip drive, so that's nice. Again, this is going off the parallel port on this computer. If you have a modern computer, as long as you can put a parallel card into one of your expansion slots on the desktop, you should be able to get this to work as well. Again, no idea why you'd want to, other than it's just fun to play with these or get information off. When I was reading online how to connect this to a modern computer, especially laptops, modern laptops don't have parallel ports. Most people said that you can't do it with the USB to parallel. So the best thing is just go online on eBay and find yourself a cheap old laptop for under $100 and use that to get the data off. That's literally what they said. And there's also no drivers for Windows 7. So you have to use XP drivers, and the reason no one's ever actually now it says 7 minutes, 4 minutes, it's all over the place. The reason no one's ever actually bothered to try to upgrade the drivers. I did try to install the driver on my Windows 7 partition here, and it wouldn't work. But I think the reason they don't is because most Windows 7 computers, modern ones at least, can use virtualization to just run the XP mode, and that's what it was designed for, is to be able to run with old drivers. And so here you have a really old machine that can't do virtualization, and so I mean, not hardware virtualization, you can do software virtualization with VMware, but I think that would be really slow. So doing an extra partition and running Windows XP on was the better to do. Like I said, this is my Tinker computer. However, I have Chrome on here. I was able to watch YouTube videos, worked fine. So this 2004, 2005 computer is really, still, it's kind of interesting that we're like 17, 18 years old, and yet it still can use, the latest version of Chrome and actually watch YouTube videos. And that's sort of my gauge of, is this still a useful computer? And it is. Like I said, I think I can put a slightly faster processor in here. If you do a Windows 7, you can do sort of a gauge of how fast it runs. It gives you a factor of 1 because the video driver is slow. The chip, I think, the processor, I think it says 3.7 is times. So it's a scale between 1 and 7. I forget what it's called, but you can do an estimate of how well your system fits with Windows 7. So this gives you, for Windows 7, it gives you a factor of, or a rating of 1, but that's only because the graphics drivers are slow. Everything else gives you between 3 and 4, so it's not too bad. So, come on. Oh. And by the way, the first thing I copied was actually the 8 megabyte IOWare W32X86 402 driver. That was the one that worked. And I don't know why it's 8 megabytes because there's other software there, but you don't get the Iomega utility software. So I did find a 403 driver that was only 800K. It might have just been the driver, but anyway, I just used that because I wanted it to work. So it finished copying. So again, it's not fast, and I guess if I copy, how fast is it in reading? I don't want to copy the whole. Let's see how fast this is. Instantaneous. So it must have buffered it. Yeah, wow. So it never hit the drive. So it. I put in the comments. What I'll do is I will reboot and this time copy it over, and I'll put in the comments how fast it actually copies the stuff. Maybe it's the same speed. By the way, the ejecting of this is pretty powerful. So I'm gonna have to catch it. Watch this. Boom. Yep. It's pretty cool. Anyways, I think, so not much going on. This is really more of a setup video to show you that I have this parallel zip drive. I can get it to work on my tinkering computer. The next one I'm going to work with is I'm going to try to build the cable and get this to work on my Amiga 600 and see if I can't make this my hard disk for the Amiga 600, even though I will also be booting off an SD drive eventually on the Amiga. I think it'll be fun to see if I can do this off of a floppy media, because again, for whatever reason, I just like this old media. It's kind of fun to play with. Certainly slow and not as useful as having USB sticks, etc. But if you're into retro computers, I think it's fun. All right, I'll stop there. Thanks and sorry for the lack of in-depth technical tinkering, although maybe you learned something about parallel ports, which can be useful. And thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.